Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. Quick warning and info, in today's main story there is mention of spousal abuse and the second story also has an update. Now let's get started. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole and it's by user LittleBear1053. Am I the a-hole for not wanting my wife to do surrogacy? My 34 male wife, Olivia, 32 female, was asked by her sister, Sophia, 29 female, if she could be her surrogate. Sophia has struggled with infertility for years, and she and her husband have been wanting a kid for a long time. Olivia and I have 4 sons, 10, 5, 5, and 3, and don't plan on having more children. Olivia wants to do this for her sister and already agreed to it before discussing it with me. After Olivia gave birth to our youngest, she suffered from postpartum depression. I'm worried that this might happen again, and not to mention the toll it will take on her body. I talked with her and told her my concerns, but she got defensive and began yelling at me, telling me that I'm a horrible person for not wanting to help Sophia and her husband after they've struggled for so long. I told her that I wanted them to be able to have a kid, but there were other options that didn't involve her. She shouted some more and stormed out of the house and didn't come back until the morning. I messaged Sophia's husband, Dean, as he and I get along really well. I told him how I felt about the situation and he completely understood and told me he'd talk to Sophia. He messaged me later that night and told me that he tried to change Sophia's mind, but she wouldn't listen. When Olivia came home from work that night, she stormed up to me and slapped me. She told me that Sophia and Dean didn't want to follow through with the surrogacy because of me, and Sophia was really upset about it. Olivia called me selfish and told me to get over it because she's doing it regardless of how I feel. I've given up talking to her about it because I don't want her to get more angry. She's been sleeping in the guest bedroom, and I'm pretty sure she's only staying at the house because of the boys. We barely talk and she doesn't even look at me. I got a message from Dean saying they've got an appointment later this week to begin the process. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't want to see her go through what she did again. I guess there's nothing I can do. She's really made up her mind. Well, Opie, the first thing I'd do is start grabbing the evidence that you've got that you're in an abusive relationship. Your wife does not respect you and apparently she doesn't even love you. Let's go from small to big, and weirdly enough, the smallest thing is that she doesn't give a crap about your opinion regarding the surrogacy, be it for the most of altruistic reasons that she might have. In my opinion, that's not a decision that she just gets to make alone and tell you that she's doing it regardless of what you think. Second, when you gave her your reasons to be against this, it wasn't even for you. It was because you were worried about her, and her response was to get angry, scream at you, and leave the family home for a whole night without telling you where she was. And finally, the slap. I don't think it's just the one-time slap. From the way you wrote your post, this is a regular occurrence. She gets angry, she flips out, and she hits you. You are in an abusive relationship, OP, and you need to try to snap out of it and get yourself and your kids away from her. Because my next question is, if she acts like this with you, how does she behave with the children? So I'm not going to judge the a-hole or not because I think the question is absolutely wrong. And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. TopBit85 says, the slap alone would push me to a divorce lawyer, not to mention all the shouting. This is what she's like when she's not suffering from postpartum depression? A friend of mine did this for someone. The hormones they put her through so she could carry the embryo were brutal. Her moods were off the chart. I'm sure she expects you to cater to her every passing whim. This doesn't sound like something that should happen without both married partners agreeing. Jokester316 says, not the a-hole. She unilaterally chose a decision that will affect your whole family. Your concerns are valid. I don't like the fact that she physically assaulted you. She's now ignoring you, creating a hostile home environment for you and your children. A marriage is supposed to be a partnership. That is not happening. Is this normal behavior for her? Physically assaulting you, giving you the cold shoulder? Unfortunately, I think this will be the straw that broke the camel's back. I doubt your marriage survives this pregnancy. You may not want to do it, but get a consultation from a divorce attorney. Your wife is taking you for granted. I'd also quit communicating with the in-laws. They will support her and drive a wedge between the two of you. And underscore Strangway says, this is abusive, OP. Definitely not the a-hole, but you will be if you don't protect your family unit. You have 4 children and your wife already has a history of postpartum depression and now physical abuse. You would be more than justified separating or divorcing your spouse for this, at which point I'd ask for 50-50 custody and see how she fares when she's truly alone and pregnant with 4 boys half the time. So the community agreed that OP was not the a-hole, and they say that OP should lawyer up and start looking to see if he should get away from his wife. Now, unfortunately, OP did not reply to any comments or give us any edits, which means we move on straight to the update to see what happened next. I've been reading the comments on my first post for the last several days, and I'm feeling a mix of emotions from them. There are things I need to address, so I'll do that now before I get into what's been happening since that post. To start off, many people have noticed that I haven't replied to any comments and are calling me out for it. To be honest, I didn't plan on answering any comments. I've seen posts where the OP doesn't reply to anyone, so I didn't think it was a big deal. The comments were very overwhelming as well. I've seen a lot of comments saying that this is fake, and honestly, I wish it was, but it isn't. I would never lie about something like this. I'm not the type of guy to do that, and the reason my account is new is because I didn't want to post anything on my main account. There have also been messages I received that have been less than kind and haven't helped in the slightest with what's been happening. The things people have sent me are really hurtful and disgusting. And I've noticed people calling me an a-hole for going behind Olivia's back and talking to Dean. The reason I spoke to Dean was because anytime I tried to talk to Olivia, she would ignore me and walk away. Sophia wasn't even an option. She hasn't liked me since Olivia and I began dating. I have no idea why, but she's always been rude to me, and I knew if I talked to her about this, it wouldn't go well. And the thing that everyone has been talking about, the abuse. So this wasn't the first time Olivia has hit me. This started a few months before our oldest was born. It happened out of nowhere. I talked to her about it, and she promised it wouldn't happen again, but it did. Every time she would hit me, she'd apologize afterwards, but soon she stopped apologizing. I did try to stand up to her, but whenever I did, she hit me harder and said she'd scream if I did anything. I told her I'd go to the police, and she said she'd claim it was in self-defense. She then began to mock me by saying that no one would ever believe me, and they'd all side with her, and I'd never see my boys again. It just got worse as the years passed. I know a lot of people will call me weak and that I need to grow a pair, but I was terrified. I don't want to lose my kids. They mean everything to me. And if I had to put up with the abuse to be with them, then I would. Olivia has never touched the boys. I asked her one time if she had, and let's just say that didn't end well. I've checked them for marks and have seen nothing, and the boys are hardly out of my sight, and I haven't seen anything amiss. She also has never hit me in front of them. She always does it when they're not around. My 2 older brothers, Sam and Jack, figured out what was happening and begged me to go to the police, but I couldn't. I asked them not to say anything, but my oldest brother Sam has a friend who's a lawyer, and I found out only recently that they've been talking to him about it and have secretly been telling him when they notice I have a new mark or when something happens. Back to the main problem though. I hadn't seen Olivia for almost 2 days, and when she came back I asked if we could talk. The boys were with Jack for the day, so they weren't in the house. She went to walk away again, but I stepped in front of her and said that we needed to talk. This was the first time I'd stood up to her in years, and I was scared as hell. She looked shocked, but then she put the scowl back on and huffed out a fine. I had my phone beside me and recorded the conversation. We sat on the couch and I told her again how I felt about the surrogacy. She kept rolling her eyes and scoffing every time I said something. I told her I was worried about how it would affect our family. I brought up the postpartum depression again and she got angry. She started yelling at me, telling me it was my fault that she had it and that I should never have gotten her pregnant. Every kid except for our oldest, who wasn't planned, was her idea. That's not to say that I didn't want my boys. I did, but I didn't have a say about it. She called me a horrible father and a husband and said that I should support her. I said that if she goes through with the surrogacy, I won't be supporting her as it's not my kid. She got mad, hit me, called me an a-hole, hit me again, and left the house. I called Sam, asked if he could come over, and waited for him to arrive. When he got to my house, I just broke down. I told him everything about what's been going on. The abuse, the surrogacy, the self-harm, and self-ending thoughts. He hugged me and told me it would be alright and everything would work out. This is when he told me about his lawyer friend and how he and Jack have been talking to him. I told him I recorded the conversation with Olivia, and he said he'd sent it to his friend, along with a photo of the bruise from when she hit me before, and a few other marks as well. I had given up years ago, and my kids were the only thing keeping me going. I've suffered from depression and self-harm, which I still do, and I think if I didn't have my boys, I wouldn't be here. I'm finally standing up for myself, and it feels really good. I'm going to divorce her and go for full custody. I just hope the courts won't take her side. And I just want to thank everyone who has been really kind about this, especially the people who messaged me. I haven't replied to all of them, but just know that I appreciate it so much. Opie, I'm really sorry that you're having to go through all of this, but it's a good thing what you're doing, and it's a good thing that your brothers have your back. Now, back to the proof thing, I think you need to get some cameras, inside and outside of the house, to record everything that she does to you. And when the time comes, use that as proof to get full custody. I would also go to the police and file a report to start the paper trail. And hopefully all of that will help make your case stronger. Hopefully we see an update from you in the future, Opie, in which you're happier and you and your boys are safe. Take care in the meantime, Opie, and thank you for sharing. And now let's move on to the next post that also has an update. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole, and it's by user ThrowArray1037. Am I the a-hole for dressing up in a questionable group costume per my friend's request? So, my best friend for about 7 years, we'll call him Derek, is a little person. He has 3 brothers who are all little people, and they are all so comfortable with their lives and love making jokes about their height. I have somewhat of a dark sense of humor, but was uncomfortable joining them in the jokes until I really got to know them and they assured me it was okay. Anyways, there was a costume party for our mutual friend's birthday where everyone was supposed to be a movie character. Derek and his brothers came to me and asked me if I would be comfortable dressing up as Willy Wonka while they all dressed up as Oompa Loompas. I said sure, and we went to the party. We got a few looks, but nobody said anything at the party. Well, this morning I woke up to a bunch of texts calling me a horrible person for doing that and insinuating I made the suggestion for the group costume. No matter what I say in my defense gets blasted back at me as doubling down on my ignorance. Usually in these cases I ignore it because I try not to let other people's perceptions of me bother me. But with the amount of people messaging me, I'm just kind of overwhelmed. Am I the a-hole? Well, Opie, in my opinion, no, you're not the a-hole. It wasn't your idea, you didn't coerce them, you didn't force them. They actually pitched the idea to you and you were okay with it. To me, this is just a lot of people who don't understand what's going on in the background and just jumping to conclusions that you are some sort of ignorant a-hole that forced his friends to have this costume. Now, I agree with you that in situations like this, you should just try to ignore it because it is ignorance. But considering the amount of people that are harassing you for this, maybe you can talk to Derek and ask him if he can help you out making some sort of post or message that explains the whole situation and allows for people to understand that this wasn't you being an a-hole. And what do you guys think about OP's situation? What is your judgment? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Biff Talon says, not the a-hole. I'm assuming you were dressed up like the characters from the 1971 movie? If so, I don't see the problem. It was your friend's idea and he was obviously comfortable with it. Were all the complaints based on that incorrect assumption that it was your idea? Or do some of these people think that the costume itself is offensive? And OP responds, most of them are accusing me of it being my idea and that I pressured them into it. Only 2 or 3 of the others are saying that in general the costume is offensive. Dina Felice says, quote, that's really bizarre. Are you saying that I should have overruled Derek's choice of a group costume because I'm a better arbiter of what is offensive to little people than he is? Are you saying that all roles in movies played by little people are inherently offensive? Which costumes do you think are appropriate for little people to wear? And while we're on the subject, why are you complaining to me instead of Derek? Is it because you don't value his opinion on the situation as much as that of an average height person? There were literally 5 of us who were part of the group costume, and you've decided to discount the perspectives of 4 out of the 5 people? End quote. Not the a-hole. I would encourage you to stop defending the choice of costume and redirect complainers to the person who actually chose it. They are all being inherently ableist by exclusively complaining to you without even discussing it with the person they suppose is the victim. For that matter, if they really believe the costume was offensive, then the whole group is equally to blame and they should be raising objections to all 5 of the participants. And Fruit Popsicle says, not the a-hole. They are in fact implying that your short friends are not your equals. Do the mutual friends think height makes it easier to trick them? You are not in a position of power over them and they had equal participation in the costume idea. I'm autistic and sometimes I notice people infantilizing me and it's disturbing. It makes me feel like I'm not being seen as a human being. A similar thing is happening here with your friends. They probably won't be happy to hear about the jerks trying to rescue them when they don't even need help. I'd tell them. Alright, well, the community agrees that OP is not the a-hole and they made some really good points to everybody that's coming down on OP. So now, let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. First, I would like to make some clarifications since I didn't mention them in the original post. I am a 22 male and Derek is 21 and is the second youngest of his brothers. We were specifically dressed from the 1971 movie with Gene Wilder, and Derek and his brothers were the only little people at the party. I had around 30 texts complaining about the costume, all of them people I barely know or had only met at the party, which had about 150 to 200 people. Out of all those, only 3 were just saying Willy Wonka in general is offensive, and the rest were accusing me of forcing the idea and wouldn't believe me when I told them it wasn't my idea. Anyways, on to the update. A couple of minutes after I posted the story, I got a call from Derek. He said he had received some texts from people from the party regarding the costume, telling him they were messaging me to get me to apologize to him for my ignorance, to which he informed them it was his idea. He was then told what happened. Apparently, his younger brother, we'll call him Ethan, wasn't wanting to be an Oompa Loompa for the party, but got roped into the idea by the others before coming to me and had made a passing comment about it during the party. His comment was either taking as all 4 of them were unhappy with the costume or word spread and got twisted into it being my idea. Basically, it was a huge misunderstanding. Ethan called me a few minutes after I got off the phone with Derek and apologized for getting me in that situation. He told me he had bought a separate costume he was wanting to wear for the party, only to be told Derek had already bought 4 Oompa Loompa costumes and couldn't return them, so he figured he'd save the separate costume for Halloween. He said someone came up and asked him about the costumes and he answered honestly, but didn't think his comment would cause anything, especially since the end of his comment reiterated he was having a good time. Derek, Ethan, and his brothers have all come to my defense, and while nobody who was sending me demanding text has apologized, they have officially stopped the texts. Anyways, thanks for the support. As I said in the original post, I try to ignore people's negative opinions of me, but 30 people was a lot, and I was just so overwhelmed that I thought maybe I did something wrong. Glad to know the whole situation was just a mix-up. Well, OP, I still don't think it's a mix-up. I still think it's people that just grabbed a little piece of information and ran with it because, I don't know, they just wanted to seem like better people or something, considering they don't have the guts to actually call you and apologize for what they accused you of. Yeah, that shows some character, doesn't it? Anyways, OP, it's good that it didn't escalate into something worse, and all four brothers have your back. So here's wishing you all the best in the future. Thanks for sharing and take care. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.